Hey, thanks for stopping by and watching this video. I'm just going to talk a little bit over it while you're watching. This is Django. Django was here last summer as well. If you want to check out those videos, it's Django's Preschool, part 1 and 2, and I think there's a third one as well. Django's here for a little bit of a start, and I'm working on him seeing me from above and being able to handle things happening above him and sounds, movements, things like that, so that he'll be ready to ride pretty soon. Django's only 3, so he's not physically ready for a lot of work, but he is mentally ready. I did lots of this preparation last year, so this is really just a review. He seems to be remembering everything really, really well. In fact, I think this was one of our first sessions of the year. I really wasn't planning on riding him so quickly, but you know, when the horse is ready, you have to step ahead with them. Otherwise, they kind of start to slip back a little bit. So even though he was young, he was really ready to find out what happens next. So we had to go there, and I just kept it slow and easy for him so that I wasn't pushing his body or his mind too hard. I do lots of things like turning them with the rope around their bum, and that helps them learn to take direction as well as tolerate things touching them in places that might surprise them. And hopefully that will keep accidents from happening with his future rider and me. And he really isn't bothered by any of that at all. So not much else to do besides get on him. So we do some more work with me above him and traveling out and covering ground. This helps him build body and build strength. Build a little work ethic and learn to tolerate following directions for a little bit longer than 15 to 20 minutes, which is what our sessions in the round pen usually were. So here we go. I stay in the rope halter for the first ride or two just because it's what they're used to taking their directions in. In this way, they're not trying to learn a new piece of equipment while dealing with something new like rider's weight or being able to see you from a different angle. So he understands the halter, and it's an easy way for us to transition, but I'll get into a hackamore as quickly as possible for him. The directions are a whole lot clearer from a hackamore. You can really see how unbalanced he is. He's spread out with his legs and trying to figure out how to carry a rider. Be asking a lot to take him up to a trot or a lope at this stage, so I'll just let him wander around, find his feet, and start to feel more comfortable carrying me. He's not scared, he's just trying to figure out how this whole thing works. Back to the trail again. When we first started doing this, Django would get pretty annoyed after about 10 minutes and want to be going back to the barn, so he started learning how to go longer and longer. Ride number 2. Getting on him from the ground still here, just so he feels that saddle move and gets the experience. Mounting from the ground can be tough on their backs, especially when they're young, but he's going to have to be able to do it. So I'll do it a few times, and I'll make sure I do it from the left and the right, but I'll also use the fence and blocks and things like that as well. So now we find out what he really thought last time. Sometimes the time off lets them think about it and they decide they really didn't like being a riding horse. Other times they are like, all right, I figured this out. Django really seemed to be pretty comfortable with the idea of carrying a person around, but still physically needs more muscle and needs more practice. He needs to figure out how to balance with that extra weight up there. At this stage, I just let him go where he wants, and I shape myself to match what he's doing. So he's looking left, I match myself and show him what that feels like. And a little bit later on, I'll ask him to go my way, but at this stage, he's learning to carry me, he's learning to tolerate that extra weight up there and my balance shifting around, and so I just let him find his feet his way. And it's short. I don't need to give him a reason to resent having a person up there. I leave him with a good taste in his mouth, and hopefully next time he'll be eager to find out what else we can do together. And back to the trail. This is fun for both of us. Manny's just a trooper. He helps me out with all these young guys. They give him a hard time at first, and then they figure it out and just truck alongside him and realize they get to see new places, check out new sights, new smells, taste grass from various places. Pretty soon they look forward to coming out, even if they don't get to stop at every tree they want to. On to ride number 3. First time in the hackamore for him. He's a pretty small head, being an Arab. He's tall, but he's got a small head, so this hackamore was a little bit big on him. And being a thin-skinned Arab, he wasn't too happy about the prickly horse hair right off the bat. Takes him a little bit to get used to that sometimes. But that's part of what works for you is the tickle, so we let him figure it out. He certainly had a slightly shorter attention span with the prickly hair than he had in the halter rope, but he's also learning to take direction a little bit more and starting to follow my lead. When I start giving him directions instead of letting him choose the path all the time, I gotta make sure I give him lots of rewards so that he finds value in following the directions that I put out there for him. All these sessions, you can see a horse in the round pen on the other side of that gate back there. There's other horses in training here as well, and so while he's having his sessions, there's another horse moving around in the pen beside us. Sometimes those horses get a little squirrely, and sometimes they're nice and quiet, but it's always fun having those first few rides when you don't know how the horse in the other round pen is going to be behaving. And you may have noticed some loose horses around the outside of the round pen. We have horses in the pen out there, so sometimes they come over to say hi, and again, you never really know when they're gonna take off across the field or something. And it's really good exposure for the young horse, but it does add a little bit of a risk factor. So that trust and that ability to have the horse comfortable and looking to you is a little bit more important here than it would be if we had none of those external stimuli happening. You can see he's starting to feel a little bit more comfortable under my weight. Not 100% sure that he wants to go where I'm asking him, but he doesn't look as unbalanced on his feet as he did in those first couple of rides. And this is Django protesting. I'll take it. Could be a whole lot worse. I'll just find him a nice spot where he's followed my lead and picked up the foot I've asked. And once I get that, I'll give him his head back, hop off, pick up where we left off next time. He's really young still, and although he will have to learn how to push through those things eventually, he's a bit young for that right now. His attention span is short. He doesn't have a lot to give me at this point as far as time, and so I got to take what I can get and give him lots of rewards so he keeps liking the time he's got with people. Plenty of time for that later. I'm lucky. I've got so many hills and so many places to ride around here. The horses get a lot of exposure to different places. Here we've got a friend with us, so he's got another horse behind him, getting used to those sounds. Lots of wide open spaces, exposure to deer and cattle and all sorts of stuff. Found him a smaller hackamore here. This one works a little bit better for him. A little bit less moving around on his face, which hopefully will keep him a little bit more comfortable. And a bit of a thinner Makati, so it's not quite as prickly as the last one was. A little bit less weight to it. He's a pretty sensitive guy, so he doesn't need a whole lot of bite to it. Just something that he can feel a little bit clearer than that rope halter. Right here, just as I sat down, a whole bunch of horses came running in at the other end of the pasture here. So you can see him staring at them, wondering what they're doing and why they're running. But he lets it go pretty quick. And I think that's one of the first times he stepped out forward right off the bat. He's usually pretty squirrely at the beginning and does some turns and swings his hip a bunch. That time he stepped under and he walked forward, and that's really what I'm looking for, is a horse that will step under and walk out. So he's finally doing that here. You can see him really marching ahead, covering ground, and not really too reluctant anymore. So that's really nice. That's what I wanted to see. That's where I wanted to find a spot for him where he could feel confident carrying me, and then kind of call it a season. They don't need a lot in their first season of riding, just a little bit of the basics, help them understand what leg means, what your hands mean, what your body means. And they just need to grow some more. There's a lot that they don't give you, not because they can't or they won't, but because they don't have the strength yet. So when they're young like this, it's helpful just to give them the basic foundation and then just let them grow. When they've got bone and body and muscle, they'll give you a lot more than they can when they're little. I'm starting to connect his feet to my hands. Our timing together is getting a little bit better. That's really all I need of a young horse in his first season. He doesn't have a lot more mental capacity to give me than about 10 to 15 minutes at a time, so I gotta keep it fairly short so that I don't lose his interest. So we spent the rest of the season riding out, covering ground, building his body and muscle, building his work ethic. And then he's still here running with the herd, covering ground, foraging, and enjoying his life as a horse. We'll see what happens next year.